Ravy G, how you doing, brother? Sorry, just fixing a bunch of stuff here. Wait, mm, oh, right. Okay. You're doing well. Nice. Happy to hear that, bro. Congrats on 25K. Thank you very much, sir. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate it, man. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. Like it's gone way quicker than I expected it to. Like seriously way quicker than I expected it to. But I can't say that I'm hating it. I'm definitely enjoying the new content. Very, very much so. Okay. Almost done. And final one would be that. There we go. Okay, we're good. Caliph Knight, how you doing, brother? Welcome back. Welcome back, sir. Ah, here we go. We're back. We're back in business, boys. Let's just quickly. Here we go. Stream assets, stream music. And let's get some music going so we can actually chill out. All right, boys, welcome back. It's been a while since we've streamed. It's been a while. I was busy, like seriously busy with a crazy amount of videos, reading, researching. It's been nuts, but I'm happy to be back. I'm very happy to be back here. Happy to be able to hang out with you guys. I'm trying to see if everything is still set up correctly. I hope it is. Welcome to every single person. We're going to be talking about politics. We're going to be talking about gaming. We're going to be talking about everything. I want to talk. Well, there's so much that's happened. Everything seems to be in free fall. At least if you're South African, literally everything is in free fall at the moment. But we'll wait for people to show up, people to get here so that we can actually have some chats and conversations. Is the stream stable, boys? It looks pretty stable on my side. Diffin, how you doing? Welcome back. Welcome back. Trying to see that there isn't too much delay, too much stuff going crazy here. Going to jump off the deep end instantly with this. Did you see Homath made a video going over levels of thinking consciousness? I have not. No, Caliph, I have not. I've been very, very aimed at sort of for like the last 2 weeks or so. I've been very aimed at South Africa and the stuff that's happening in South Africa, for a couple of reasons, but mainly just because it's CR. How you doing, bro? It's obviously my country, right? Tekla, how you doing, bro? And it's there's so much stuff going wrong, so much stuff not being reported on, so much stuff not being talked about in the way that I want people to talk about it, and just so much division that it felt like it's important to actually discuss these things. And apparently YouTube just agrees, because the channel, I think this is the fastest I have ever had a channel grow. Like even my old WoW channel never grew this fast. Like we're on 2,500 subs just in the last 28 days, if not more, right? So the channel is growing astronomically. And so clearly I'm doing something right, or people just really want to know what's happening in South Africa. So yeah, I've been very focused on the South African question, reading a lot. There's a lot of stuff that I've always known a lot about the politics in South Africa, because obviously I live here and I always care about politics. But when you start going into it, and like when you're covering a video and you so for example, today I was covering the tariffs from Trump. But then there's like a bunch of offshoots from that, right? So how is the tariffs going to impact South Africa? The short answer is just a lot of jobs is going to be lost. But there's so many layers to it. So when I get into the job losses, I'm like, okay, but what's the actual GDP impact going to be of this? And then I go, oh, so this is how the GDP is impacted by this. What happens when the GDP goes down by 0.1%? What happens there? And then you go, oh, so 0.1% equates to a lot of job losses. So effectively, it's sort of like for every 1% growth that you have in a country, at least in South Africa, we tend to create about 100,000 new jobs per 1% growth. The losses can sometimes be much worse. So if you lose 1% economic growth, you can lose up to something like 150 to 200,000 jobs as a 1% loss. So, in a country where we're already not creating enough jobs, that is very bad. And then you get into stuff like economic death spirals. And when you read about that, it scares you even more because you're like, oh, crap, that's a thing that can happen. And that's probably what's going to happen here in South Africa. So it's just been a lot of reading and a lot of trying to make sense of the world that I live in and the country that I live in, but then also just politics, man, especially South African politics. It's a lot of things. Boring isn't one of them. It's definitely not boring. So you haven't had time for Death Stranding 2 then? I wouldn't be able to play Death Stranding 2 even if I had the time to play it because it's only on PlayStation for now. So once it comes to PC, I'll definitely play it. But if it's not on PC, you know me. I'm not a console Andy. Mostly essay politics videos. Oh yeah, Tech Club. They've been taking most of my time. Oh, how's the visit going, Caleb? You enjoying it? I'm also a PC girly. So yeah, I feel like PC is just the natural sort of evolution, right? A lot of people might get into gaming through consoles or whatever, but Isaac, how you doing, sir? A lot of people might get into consoles as sort of like their first foray into video games.
Oh, damn.
Paul Sawyer, how you doing, brother? 2 months spot of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you. Thank you. You're far too kind, sir. But then at some point you're going to get a PC, and PC is just so much better because of everything you can do on it. Just makes more sense, right? Getting out from under parents, demands for a week. Hey, that's good, man. Lekker, thanks. Ek sê ek bly om dit te hoor. Ek moet seker in die begin van my video's begin Afrikaans praat sodat mense actually kan glo dat ek van Suid-Afrika af is. For those of you that's not from South Africa and don't know what the hell I just said, there's this thing at the moment, like pretty much every video I put out, there's people who go, this man's not South African. And so it's just like constantly having to explain where my accent is from and why my accent is completely broken. So I was just thinking, man, I should probably just at the start of my videos do like an intro in Afrikaans, just so people know, listen here, this is actually an Afrikaans person speaking to you. Understood like 80% of it? Ravy, yeah, if you're from the Netherlands, you'll probably understand most of it. Who is this different and why is he a clone of Akalon? Yurek, how you doing, brother? Mason, how you doing, bro? A mobile and some friend is recommending he uses a controller for FPS games. Well, he should stop playing on mobile. Market Mengel of Mechels. I've no idea how to do that. Just discovered you recently from a gaming video. Nice to see another RSA gaming channel and politics. Andreas Salzer, how you doing, sir? Welcome. Very happy to have you here. Yeah, we've sort of, we've gone full circle. Started with gaming, then went into gaming politics, and now just straight up politics. Sounded like you had mucus in your throat and you couldn't cough it up. Massey, how you doing, you bastard? Guys, I haven't been here for 2 weeks, and I get back, and you instantly all start just criticizing me. And belittling me and breaking down my character. Like, what is this? I get, like, when I'm streaming every single day, you guys are being mean to me. That's perfectly fine. But hey, this is a new day, new dawn. Let's try and be a little positive before we start with the insults, shall we? Bengals. I mix my English all the time. I'm not the best Afrikaans speaker in the world. Absolutely not. Know your meme? How you doing, brother? I'm definitely not the most or the best Afrikaans speaker out there, even though I am fully Afrikaans. I was born in an Afrikaans home. Both my parents are Afrikaans. All of my family members are Afrikaans. I've been so used to speaking English for such a long time because, from the age of 6, my best friend was English, raw English, couldn't speak a word of Afrikaans, so I had to learn how to speak English so that we could actually hang out. He also learned how to speak Afrikaans, just by the way. He's one of the only Sotis in the whole of South Africa, I think, that doesn't speak Afrikaans with an English accent, but never mind that, right? So I learned how to speak English from him, and without an accent, because for 3 or 4 years, we were best friends. Then, from high school, every girlfriend I had was English. Then at university, it was, also all English friends, right? From England, from the UK, a bunch of American friends. So my accent pretty much for 20 years has been influenced by people outside of South Africa. English, my mom was Afrikaans. Nice. Doing good. Found out I'm going to be an uncle again. Massy. How did that happen? It's all been stored up until now. Nope, it's still the same audience. Mason, yeah, sadly. Actually, I've missed you guys. I have truly missed you guys. Your accent in the beginning. Isak, yeah, I remember you asked about it. And there's a couple of other people. Pretty much every video, there'll be someone going, where's this guy from? I don't recognize the accent. What is funny is how every single person thinks I'm from somewhere else. Some people go, yeah, look, listen to this. The funniest one was yesterday, I think. Someone said, this Texas guy trying to tell us how we should run our country. And it's like, wow, you think I'm from Texas? Well done. Cowboys, let's go. But it's sort of I don't even know, man. How did that happen? Well, when a man loves a woman, Cold Sawyer, you're not wrong. How you doing, brother? From South Africa or Dutch? A lot of people get it instantly, I think, because there's certain mannerisms and certain... So I've been trying to figure out what this massive growth spurt on the channel has been, right? So because it's just exploded. The channel is doing better than I've ever had. As I said earlier, this is the best I've ever had a channel grow. The fastest I've ever had a channel grow. I'll put out a video and I'll pretty much instantly have 10, 20, 30 subscribers on that video in the first 1,000 views. It's insane. And I've been trying to figure out what that is. Now, there's probably a lot of reasons for it. But one of the reasons, I think, is every culture has its own way of speaking, its own mannerisms, its own jokes, type of sarcasm. And obviously, I'm South African, right? So the way I speak, even though the accent might not be South African, it is a very South African way of speaking. The way my sense of humor works, the way my sarcasm will work, the way everything is going to be South African. And so I think it just works. Whereas when I'm speaking to a predominantly American or European audience, some people love that, right? So some people like the fact that there's different cultures and so on. But for some people, it's just so alien that some of the things just don't work. The jokes don't work. The sarcasm doesn't work. I know for a fact my sarcasm does not work in America. Oh, yes, because Daddy. Americans have this thing where sarcasm has to be super obvious. If you're going to be sarcastic, Grofal, how you doing, brother? You have to be incredibly obvious with your sarcasm. Whereas in South Africa, not so much, right? In South Africa, the right amount of sarcasm is almost hidden. You don't want to be too obvious with your sarcasm. It has to be a sort of, people know you're sarcastic, but there is a moment where it sort of goes, is he being sarcastic now? So whenever I'm sarcastic in a video for an American audience, there's always people immediately taking as, this is what I mean, right? Because I'm not making it a sort of obvious enough. People are becoming aware of the political instability and want to know what we can do. 1533U, how you doing, brother? And yes, I think you're absolutely correct. I think there's definitely an awakening in South Africa when it comes to politics, right? There's definitely a sense, I think. And I think what happens a lot is as the country situation is getting more and more dire, people are looking for answers. People are looking for someone to explain what the hell is going on. Because let's be real, if you just read the news, so let's say you just open News 24, you're not getting the full story. Like, I have now covered South African politics for about 3 weeks, right? And I've been a sort of avid follower of South African politics for probably like a decade. The one thing that's become super obvious to me, pretty much right off the bat, is I cannot just read one news article. Because the one news article will only tell me what they want me to know. Not what is actually out there, not what is actually happening, but only what they think I should know. So then you have to really go look, and most people don't have time for that. Right? Most people don't have time to go and look at multiple articles to figure out what the hell is going on. And so they rely on people who have nothing better to do that for them. And then, give them what is actually happening. And I try to do it as honestly as possible, Mason, I don't even know if Ground News has South African news on it. I don't know why it would, because the problem in South Africa is that almost all of our news sources are far left. There's not a single one that I know of that I would even call center right. Rich humor is mostly busting each other's balls with banter. True, Alistar. How you doing, bro? See, Yurik, but this would be South America. And I'm sure there's South American news, but I don't know if there would be South African news. Jesus, Democrat campaign line. Caleb, what's that? Say they enjoy dark humor, then you expose them to British humor, and they realize their humor is white as milk. I would say British humor is definitely very dark. Do you know of the Truth Report in South Africa? I do not. Afriforum's focus news is right-wing news. 1533, I'm not entirely sure if... Okay, so Afriforum is definitely a right-wing source, right? Afriforum is more conservative than what they are liberal. The problem is, Afriforum obviously has a bias, right? The Viking Barbie, how you doing? Thank you very much. I've always wanted to know who my number 8 fan was, so I really appreciate that. So Afriforum obviously has their own bias, right? They have their own view of how things should play out and what things should be. So this is where it gets sort of hard. When you get to, it's one thing to have like a conservative news outlet like Fox, for example, who they're just going to give you whatever the conservative viewpoint is. Whether that's right or wrong is really up to you, but they'll give you whatever the conservative viewpoint is. Afriforum will give you the conservative viewpoint, but they'll also give you the Afriforum viewpoint. And so it's still going to be washed through their organization's lanes. And it's not on purpose. You can't help it. People will always have bias. And it's your job to try and figure out what that bias actually is. I think the big problem that we have in South Africa. So here is what I would love to do. If the channel continues to grow and does well, one of my biggest dreams would be to employ actual investigative journalists. This is sort of my plan, maybe long-term for Patreon, is investigative journalism, because I think this is the one thing that South Africa lacks in almost every circumstance. We have a lot of people regurgitating the news. They just sort of, everyone hears the story on Twitter and then they reveal it or expose it. But we don't have actual investigators that uncover the crap that's happening in South Africa on a daily basis. Great example would be Lieutenant General Mkwanazi. How is it that our journalists weren't all over the story from the very start. How is it that a general has to come out and reveal this before any of our journalists even wake up and realize, oh, wait, our police minister may actually be a bloody criminal? Like, what the hell? Graven, kind of like CoffeeZilla, but maybe a little bit more, because I genuinely believe YouTube is the future of journalism. I don't think that modern day journalism is going to last very long. The legacy journalists, I don't think they're going to last very long. I think YouTube offers a unique perspective because you can keep putting out stories. You can make a lot of money on YouTube. And if you can take that and then employ actual investigative journalists that can look for your stories, that can help you sort of expose the stuff that's actually happening behind the scenes, I think that's a much better play than trusting the legacy media, because investigative journalists cost a lot of money. You have to fund them. You have to pay them a salary. You have to fund all of their excursions wherever they go. It's a lot of money, and you don't make a lot of that money back. The expose that you write will probably not be read by everyone because exposes tend to be massively long. But documentaries are watched by people every single day on YouTube. People love documentaries. So when you put out a story, expose, in a documentary form, people will love to watch that, right? And it will reveal the darkness that's going on in South Africa. Dave's political compass does not make any sense anymore. I am socially liberal, economically conservative, think people should pay less taxes and they can marry whoever they like, but I am right-wing because I trust in biology. The Viking Barbie, I would say the big issue with the political compass is that it's mostly based on American politics, right? Let me just quickly, the Truth Report is center-right and has many RSA YouTubers and such as Morning Shot, Big Daddy Liberty, and Joe Emilio. It was made by Rob Hersoff. I'll look into it, Andreas. I'll definitely look into it. Okay, so the Viking Barbie, I think when it comes to South African politics, I would say what is considered right-wing in South Africa. So, for example, some people consider the DA as right-wing. Now, as a conservative, I will say this triggers me to no end because I am conservative. I am right-wing, right? I'm right-wing on the economy. I'm right-wing socially. I'm very conservative when it comes to social issues. For example, I don't think people should be able to marry whoever they want. I think people should be allowed to be with whoever they want, right? If two men want to be together, that's fine, but that's not marriage, right? Marriage has a clear definition. It's a religious definition. It's not supposed to be a political or a civil definition in any way, shape, or form. And unless the marriage, adheres to biblical understanding of what marriage is, it shouldn't be called a marriage. But then again, I also think the government shouldn't be involved in marriage to begin with. So, maybe you could call me liberal on that front, because I think I don't see why this has anything to do with the government. But yeah, I'm pretty conservative on every single level, right? I do break away from conservatives because unlike most conservatives who think the government should enforce certain rules, I sort of think the government should not enforce social rules. I think people should just, for the most part, be left to do their own thing. And the DA, I can honestly say, is nowhere close to right-wing. There's not a single thing the DA stands for that I agree with at all. I would call the Democrats or the DA, I would call the DA far more, they're almost like social liberals or social democrats. They mostly want benefits from the state. It's not even rights-based. It's economic incentives that shouldn't apply to them because they aren't having kids anyways. Giving tax breaks to married couples is about giving them an easier time to have a family. That's what it's supposed to be, right? That's literally what it's supposed to be. Progressivism driving at the speed limit isn't conservatism. True. Religious people clutching their pearls, thinking they somehow hold the patent on marriage. Mason, it's marriage literally comes from the Bible. The understanding of marriage being a thing in law, literally comes from the Bible. So to say religious people think that they hold the patent to marriage, yes, because prior to it, it wasn't a thing. You can go throughout history and you can look at the tribes throughout history. There were always pairings, right? People who would pair together and people who would stay together. But marriage, as it is defined in Western law, is 100% a biblical thing. Right? It literally comes from the Bible. So yeah, we do hold the patent on that. We invented it. The DA is a lesser evil at this point. I'd like to challenge that. How many of you actually think, and I realize we have a bunch of people that isn't from South Africa, but of the South African viewers, how many of you actually think that the DA is the lesser of two evils or of evils? Mason, no. That's not what it says. Isaac, thank you very much. I appreciate that, sir. That's not what it says, because eating has been a part of humanity for as long as humans have been around, right? Marriage, on the other hand, has not been. Isaac, dankie dat jy kom uithang het. Ek waardeer dit, bro. Jy moet 'n lekker dag hê. That's not what it says, right? So marriage and eating are two different things. Whilst eating is absolutely a part of human history, and we've done it for a long time, marriage is not. Marriage is a convention that comes from the Bible. Right? It's the Bible that says marriage is between a man and a woman because God created man and woman. Coupling is not a problem. I told you. I don't have a problem with coupling. The problem is when you call it marriage. Because marriage has a very specific meaning. A marriage is where life comes into the world. Two men can't do life. Two women can't do life. They can't make life. And so it's not marriage. No matter what you call it, you can call it coupling, you can call it whatever you want, and they're welcome to do that, right? I'm not in the business of telling adults what they can and cannot do, because I think that would be nuts. But to call it marriage is to try and take something that has a very specific purpose and meaning and turn it into something that has no purpose nor meaning. You're basically just saying dating can also be considered marriage, which it isn't, right? Dating is dating. I'm American. I don't know the difference between any of the SA parties except that the EFF are wannabe communists. This is true. The EFF is that, and we can talk about the EFF. I'm not voting for them again after the Oval Office. CR, yeah, that's a whole different discussion, obviously. Valorius, how you doing, bro? The DA is good in local elections, such as in Ward in my city. I don't trust the DA higher-ups in the government. So, so here's my thing with the DA, and this is why I asked how many of you consider the DA to be the lesser of two evils. My big issue with the DA is the ANC is a well-established, let's call them a satellite state of the communist Chinese state. Not in so much that they do exactly what the Chinese want, but insofar as the ANC wants to emulate what the Chinese have done, right? And the ANC is more than happy to give full access to the Chinese Communist Party in order for the benefits of communism within China. That's a whole different discussion, and we can actually get into it, why a lot of people are completely misled on the idea that the success of China can actually play itself out here in South Africa. But so the African National Congress is 100% bought into the BRICS narrative, and it will sell us out to the BRICS narrative in a heartbeat for the precious gifts that bring. At the exact same time, the DA is completely sold out to Davos and to the World Economic Forum, right? You can see it, right? The DA is modeling themselves after the globalist movement. They want more globalist ideas, more globalist pushing. This is why the DA, for example, is very much in favor of things like nomad visas, regardless of the fact that nomad visas are well, actually, foreigners are driving up prices in the Western Cape to the point where the Western Cape physically can't keep up anymore, and most citizens of the Western Cape has no ability to pay for the rent and the rental prices in the Cape. The DA wants this sort of one world system. And so right now, the reason the DA looks like the better of the two is because the DA, even in local government, doesn't have the power to become a globalist government, right? It doesn't have the power to sell out to the World Economic Forum and the globalist agenda because, well, they're governed by the Constitution of South Africa and the ruling party, which is the ANC, that places certain limits, and the ANC doesn't want the globalist thing, they want the Chinese thing. Should the DA come into power, I have zero doubt that the DA will sell out to the World Economic Forum and the globalist agenda so fast it will make people's heads spin. The DA will sell the entire country to the globalists because it's what they push for. You think about South Africa. South Africa, on the whole of it, is not a very progressive nation. Let's just be clear, right? If you live in South Africa, you will know we're more of a don't ask, don't tell kind of country, right? If you're gay, don't ask, don't tell. If you're lesbian, don't ask, don't tell. That's sort of the general attitude that South Africans have towards LGBTQ. We definitely don't care about the T stuff or the Q stuff or any of that nonsense. That's just not something that registers in the South African mind. The DA, however, celebrates Pride Month every single month. It was the mayor, the esteemed mayor of my city, Cape Town, that unveiled last year, I think, during Pride, the crosswalks in Cape Town that were all being, or some of them were being turned into pride flags to celebrate the vibrant gay community in Cape Town that probably makes up less than 2% of the whole community of Cape Town, right? So the DA is firmly bought into the left-wing nonsense on that side of things. So I actually think that the ANC and the DA, they're part of the worst pile, along with the MK and the FF, right? They're part of the worst pile when it comes to what South Africa has. Now the question becomes, and I'll pose this to all of you, which party is a good party? I think that side-eye apathy is the world population standard. Caleb, how do you mean? My hot take, all criminals found guilty of extreme crimes, murder, SA, people smuggling, and so on and so forth, are sent to the Jan Meyer Island to Hunger Games one another on an Arctic island filled with polar bears. Viking Barbie, I wouldn't even call that a hot take. Exactly, I 100% agree. Maybe I see the more conservative members in Pretoria. Oh, Andres, yeah. I mean, I would say Pretoria is still relatively conservative, but I think when it comes to conservatism as a big C conservative in the DA, those people have no chance of ever gaining power. Freedom Front Plus sounds like a better party than DA at the moment. CR, the big problem that the Freedom Front Plus has, and why I can't vote for the Freedom Front Plus in good conscience, is they are, sadly, they're a minority party that focuses purely on cultural issues, right? So the Freedom Front has tried to reinvent themselves, but at their core, they're still just a political party that mainly caters to Afrikaners. And that's sort of the thing that they care about most. I don't think that that's the future of South Africa. I don't think that you can cater to one group, one racial group, or one cultural group in South Africa and expect that to go well. I think South Africa needs a proper conservative government, a proper conservative party that focuses on the people of South Africa. One of the things that annoys me to no end is we had Lieutenant General Mkhwanazi comes out with a scathing report about the police minister being involved in actual crime syndicates in South Africa. And the first thing that I see on social media is people trying to racialize it. Suddenly it's a race issue. Some people are blaming the whites, some people are blaming the blacks, and I'm going, you guys do realize that our Minister of Police has literally just been accused of being a criminal. Like, this should go beyond racial lines. We shouldn't care about what race is going on here. We should care about the actual story, which is the guy that's supposed to keep us safe from criminal syndicates might be a crime boss himself. That seems to be the story, and yet that's just not something that anyone really cares about, right? Everyone in this country wants to play the racial game because it's the easiest way to get clicks. Profile South Africa is pretty much I think the poster child of what racial politics looks like. If you want to know what the end result is of pretty much every country in the world that plays this racial game, come to South Africa. We are not a nation that invents anything. We don't really invent stuff. We do perfect it, though. Segregation, the rest of the world tried it. We perfected it. Now, race-based politics, the rest of the world is playing with it. We're perfecting it. Here in South Africa, we really like to take things to the next level. As it were, pretty much all of the bad ideas. Like, as soon as an idea is bad, the South African people just can't help themselves. We see a bad idea and we go, we need this. Let's see how this would work. Humans will never change. Wake me up in 100,000 years and hope maybe we can get along a bit better. Yeah, I don't think so. He's level 99 crime boss. You're not wrong. Just another tentacle of global communism to me. Mason, how you doing, brother? The DA had a chance to improve so many things, but instead they turned the opportunity into a finger-pointing battle instead of fixing things. See, I never had any hope for the GNU, and part of this is why I got into South African politics and covering South African politics in the first place. Everyone else was celebrating the GNU. I immediately knew that this wasn't going to work. To give an explanation. So I've been doing a lot of research on this because I'm working on a video for it. When you look at coalition governments, now South Africa doesn't have a coalition government. People should be super clear on this. We're not a coalition government, but never mind that. When you look at coalition governments require so much stuff to go right. There's, largely speaking, 3 different categories of coalitions. There are functional coalitions, dysfunctional coalitions, and then what we would call unstable coalitions. And you can have functional unstable coalitions or dysfunctional unstable coalitions. But effectively, these 3 categories exist. It's sort of very much simplifying it because there's way more subcategories of this, but these are the broad 3 ones. In the stable one, what you normally need are either parties that are ideologically exactly aligned and also methodologically, I don't think that's a word, but I'll just go with that, right? They're united in their methodology. So how they want to achieve what they both agree on should be achieved. Doesn't mean it's a good coalition, because you could have 2 communist parties a coalition between communists, and they could turn the entire country into a communist state, right? So, but it's functional insofar as both parties want the same thing, they want to do it in the same way, and therefore they know where they're going. The other one is you might have parties that aren't ideologically the same, but they are pragmatic. Right? So both parties are highly pragmatic, which means that they'll find ways to deal with their differences and they'll figure it out for the good of the country. Titanborn, missed you too, brother. How you doing, bro? So that's the functional coalitions. Then dysfunctional is pretty much the exact opposite. It's when you have parties that do not share an ideology, nor do they share how to get there. Or you might have two parties that are ideologically the same, but they don't agree on how to get there. So they both want communism, but the one wants to do it through democratic means. The other one wants to do it through authoritarianism, and neither is pragmatic. Right? So they won't put their differences aside in order to achieve the greater goal. This is where you get to dysfunctional coalitions. And then unstable coalitions is usually just down to non-pragmatic parties. So parties that are either not fully pragmatic or just sort of a great example of dysfunctional coalitions would be cult of personality parties make for very unstable coalitions. So this is parties where one personality is the party. There's no real party. MK would be a great example. The EFF would be another great example of parties that are cults of personality. They are built. If Jacob Zuma dies tomorrow, the MK is done. If Julius Malema dies tomorrow, EFF is done, right? Because they're built around only this one personality. So those are largely your three types. So let's examine the GNU. We can ignore all of the smaller parties because technically the only parties that matter in the GNU is the DA and the ANC. The ANC, for their part, have shown themselves incapable of changing their minds. They will not listen to input from anyone else. They will not be pragmatic. They want to rule, and that's the end of it. And that's because the ANC has this, they believe that it's their God-given right to rule South Africa. And therefore, whenever the other parties don't agree, they'll just push it through or they'll go outside the coalition in order to get the votes. End of discussion, right? So this is what the ANC does. The DA, on the other hand, is another party that isn't pragmatic. Ideologically, the ANC and the DA completely disagree. The ANC is a socialist communist party. The DA are social democrats. They're not capitalists. Don't even listen to that nonsense. When they tell you they're capitalists, they're not. They're social democrats. They believe in mixed economy. They also don't agree on methodology. They don't want to achieve the same things, but they also don't want to achieve it in the same way. The ANC wants to go by a sort of, what's the word? Consensus. They're a consensus party. Right? They want to have consensus within the ANC and then they move forward, but they move slowly. They don't push too hard. That's why we're still not a communist country in South Africa, because the ANC only pushes until they get massive resistance and then they stop. And then they'll push on later. But they keep pushing the society closer to communism. And they oftentimes use crises as a way to get closer to this communism. The DA, on the other hand, is a party that couldn't care less about consensus. It wants its way. It believes that once it is democratically elected to do something, it has the right to do whatever it wants because it's democratically elected to do so. And it will also not listen to anyone else. This means that South Africa currently sits with a dysfunctional coalition. We're not a functional coalition, and dysfunctional coalitions are bad for two proper reasons. Either they completely destroy a country because they're so busy fighting each other that they don't rule the country, or they destroy a country by just not doing anything because they're constantly fighting each other and therefore nothing ever happens. So, the DA and the ANC isn't a good coalition to begin with. It would never have worked. And I say all of this as I'm not sure who advised the DA to go into coalition with the ANC in the first place. It makes no sense to me. Anyone with half a brain could have looked at that and told the DA, what do you think you're about to achieve here? The ANC isn't going to embrace capitalism in the way that you think you're capitalists. The ANC isn't going to work with you because they've never been able to work with anyone. Why do you think this is a good idea? Based on what? Of course, what Steenhuisen will tell us is we need to offset or postpone the Doomsday Coalition. Right? That's the EFF MK coalition. Well, let's examine them. The EFF are super communists, very greedy, very corrupt, and they want to enrich themselves. That's it. That's all the EFF cares about. They care about communism. The communism will enable them to steal, right, and enrich themselves. That's it. The MK party, on the other hand, very interesting party insofar as no one knows what the MK party wants, except for stealing. Broadly speaking, that's all the MK cares about. Whatever they can get their hands on, whatever isn't nailed down, they'll take. Any coalition between these three parties, the ANC, MK, and EFF, will lead to these three parties destroying each other. The ANC, EFF, and MK will destroy each other in coalition. Because the ANC believes that it is their God-given right to rule South Africa. The EFF literally calls Julius Malema the commander-in-chief in waiting. They believe that it is their God-given right to rule. The MK believes that it is Jacob Zuma's God-given right to rule South Africa. So these three parties will not agree on anything unless they can make it seem like it was their idea in the first place. They'll tear each other apart. In my estimation, the best thing the DA could have done was to step back and tell the ANC, boys, here's your options. You can either become a minority government, which is a place that you can be, by the way. Minority government would simply mean that the ANC is the ruling party, but they don't have the majority. Or, right, go into coalition with the MK and EFF. Go see how that works for you. That would have destroyed the ANC, EFF, and the MK. They would have ripped each other apart. Instead, the DA chose this. Let's go into coalition with the ANC. For what? Because right now, every single failure of the GNU is the mistake of the DA. They share in the failures. Right? No one is going to listen to the DA in 4 years' time when the DA says, look at what the ANC did, because you were in that government. You were part of that bullshit, right? So I don't know what the DA was thinking, except for let's destroy whatever shred of credibility we still had left, because apparently that's a good idea. If I listen to the fact that Louis Liebenberg gave Paul Mashatile wife a huge diamond, I know that there are many more who are getting away with crime, corruption, and bribery. Oh, the Overlook. You have no idea. You have no idea. The levels of corruption within South Africa, I don't think the normal South African mind, myself included here, can even fathom it. I don't think any of us even understand how many people are part of the corrupt sort of system within South Africa. From the USA and have girlfriend living in Vosloorus. I'm trying to learn as much as I can about what is going on in South Africa. What had happened? How you doing, brother? Yeah, well, good luck. It's all I can tell you, brother. Good luck. The corruption runs deeper than our minds combined. You're not wrong. You're not a good luck. Mates, and I don't know what you just wrote there. And they will be Russia's dog to undermine West intentions as much as they can, despite being South Africa. Well, I think right now the South African government believes that they can... The South African government thinks that whatever gap is left by the United States will be filled by China and Russia. So the ANC doesn't care that it's currently losing a lot of trade. Andreas, take care of yourself, man. Thanks so much for hanging out. They don't care that we're currently losing and about to lose billions of dollars worth of trade. because their thinking is China can just pick up the bill. The problem with that thinking is that China does not have a consumer economy. China has a producer economy. In other words, China thrives on exports, not imports. In fact, most of the Chinese population don't have money to buy anything. So there's always going to be a limit on the amount of stuff that you can import or export to China. Because the Chinese population, most of them are dirt poor. They're farmers, right? Living off of the government. They don't have anything. So there's always going to be a huge struggle to get them to pick up the tab. Not to mention the fact that China doesn't want to buy too much from other countries because that they can just make it at home. So why would they buy it from other countries? So I think well, the thing is, Russia may buy some things from South Africa. I think mostly it probably fruit, meat, maybe, although I'm not sure if they do. Mostly, I think it's oil trade for the most part, and that's just South Africa buying oil from Russia. Probably some minerals, although Russia also has a lot of minerals of their own. So I haven't even looked at the trade in between South Africa and Russia. Let's quickly look. Hold up. I will do anything for money. Deja, thanks for the 5 bits. Really appreciate you. Is the Joint Intergovernmental Committee on Trade and Economic Cooperation. This committee aims to enhance bilateral trade and investment. Yeah, but what do we trade? Yeah, give me the specific sectors. It seems like it's mostly energy, infrastructure, space, education, and culture. So we don't actually even... Yeah, here we go. The trade imbalance. South Africa's exports to Russia are considerably lower than its imports from Russia. For example, in January 2022, South Africa's top exports to Russia were citrus and manganese ore, while Russia's top exports to South Africa were ethylene polymers, newsprint, and coal briquettes, according to... So, in other words, almost nothing. Very, very little in terms of import and export. And that's because, again, the Russian economy doesn't have money. It doesn't have money to waste on imports and exports because it's fighting a war. So I'm not sure where South Africans think the money is going to come from. Like, who's going to pick up this tab? When America finally closes the tabs, what are we doing? Yeah, we seem to buy from Russia almost way more than what we sell to Russia. Not even sure what we buy because it sounds like mostly education and culture. And I don't know what you buy from a cultural perspective, but I guess that's a thing, you know. Who knows, man? Who knows? It's never... The one thing you can say about South Africa is that it's never boring living in this country. The Czech nursery rhyme about social democrats. Translation. Playing any games? Grofal, not today, no. We're just here talking about politics. And gaming. If you guys want to talk about games, I'm happy to do that as well. Because the gaming industry has had a significant downturn as of last week. And I have a feeling that that's just the start of it. Heard WoW music? Mason, yeah, there's WoW music playing in the background. Well, I'll say. Profile, yeah, but I think it's just the start. Imports, exports, or the tariffs? Was saying if EFF in charge, they would be a pseudo puppet state like the old Soviet satellite state. Eric, I don't even know, because the one thing that you should understand is the EFF, while they respect Russia and they love Putin, they're definitely not from the EFF wants to rule, because remember, they want to loot. For the EFF, it's all about getting into power so that they can start looting. That's why Julius Malema left the ANC, because the ANC wouldn't share in the wealth that is South Africa. Better. Should go and visit Germany nowadays. It has literally become democratical covered camouflage with the state. It's funny though, it's the way I feel. It's not like the typical, however, because of the numerous of taxes that are just to rip off and any small things in the mess, and you got to pay a lot as a fine. Digit, I feel like Europe as a whole has really turned into, I would say, pseudo-communist, right? Or at least socialist. I think Europe still likes to pretend like it's a capitalist continent. But if you look at the various degrees to which the European governments are involved with their people, it's mainly socialist, right? It's not, there's very little capitalism. What is the best path forward for South Africa? I would say the people must support ethical politicians to get rid of corruption, deal with illegal immigrants living there and running businesses. Illegal immigration is a super big problem in South Africa. It's something that I must admit, prior to actually starting to really look at South African politics, I usually just made it off as like xenophobic violence, right? Just people being xenophobic. And I had the very sort of privileged position, let's call it, of going, guys, come on, don't be so mean to people. But looking at it much more closely, I think the big problem you have in South Africa and why xenophobia is going to increase, people have nothing. Right? There's over 26 million people in South Africa that have no job, no prospect of getting a job, no money to pay for anything. What little they do have is taken by foreigners. And I'm talking healthcare, because apparently my country says if you're from a foreign country and you get sick, you can get free healthcare here in South Africa. Like you can just go to a state hospital and you don't have to worry about anything. And you can imagine for the home populace, they're looking at this going, dude, we have to wait in month-long queues to get anything done because of these illegals coming into the country and just taking our shit. And then you have a government that continuously goes, doesn't matter, stop being mean, guys. So I do think illegal immigration needs to stop instantly. All illegal immigrants need to be exported and deported out of this country as fast as possible. So that sort of has to happen. There's no if, buts, or maybes about that. You can't fix this country with the number of illegal. I think it's estimated that over 8 million people live in this country just from, I think, Nigeria. I think it's Nigeria. 8 million people living in this country. South Africa has 60 million official residents. That's an insane number, right? So that's definitely not good. The next is much harder. Because while you can absolutely fix illegal immigration into South Africa, my biggest problem with any sort of governmental overhaul, so even if, for example, we said we're going to vote for a different government, my question would immediately be, what is this new government going to do? It inherits a system that is corrupt to the core. I used to work in construction plumbing. And in order to get anything done, right, anything, there were so many palms that needed to get greased just to get permission to build, just to get permission to do anything. Everyone wants a kickback. Otherwise, they don't either deny you or it takes years to get stuff approved. That's just in the construction industry, right? We're not even talking about all the other layers of corruption within the country. You have a police force that is largely ANC loyal. You have a civil servant sort of conglomerate that is largely ANC loyal. You have a military that is largely ANC loyal. You have every facet of government filled with ANC loyals. What does you have almost every industry in this country captured by the unions? And the unions are just as corrupt. So now think about this. Just think about the DA coming in saying, we need to reduce the number of people who work for the state. The unions will bring South Africa to an absolute standstill overnight. Overnight, they'll stop the whole country. Just strikes and strike action. So how do you fix this country? The ANC has literally embedded themselves at the core of this country to the point where I don't know if it can be fixed. I don't know if it can be fixed. But an illegal immigrant should be treated as an invasion. The grey area, I agree. When we started with the driver's license, our driver's license is a different story altogether. 19 months for a passport. Donald Tusk knows we're going to drive him back to Brussels in a wheelbarrow if they don't enforce borders. People are super aware of what's going on in the West. This is why we need to split up into multiple countries. Reversing these policies while facing opposition from 70% of the population is impossible. No, you mean, I definitely agree with that, right? I think the problem that South Africa is always going to face is you have globally, it's called the Rainbow Nation. It's called the Rainbow Nation because we have, 11 official different cultures in the country. The big issue is that most of these cultures don't actually get along. Most of these cultures have completely different beliefs, completely different cultures, completely different ways of living, completely different ways of wanting to be ruled. The Zulu, for example, will not be ruled by anyone other than Zulu. The Xhosa, pretty much the same. So you have all of these different factions within South Africa. And I do actually think that the only real path forward for South Africa is multiple city-states almost. So not like different countries, but city-states, right? Where every city is a state unto itself. Because I'll even be honest with you. I don't think white people in Cape Town are exactly the same as white people in Pretoria. As someone that had the privilege of growing up in the north of the country and now live in Cape Town, I can tell you we are not the same. The mindsets are different. The outlook on life is different. The way we approach life is completely different. So I'm not even certain whether the average person in the north of the country would want to live in a country governed by the average person in the south. Because there's just completely different perspectives on how life should be, what life should be about, how hard you're supposed to work. People in north, for example, are much harder workers. I'll say that for now. Here in Cape Town, people are very obsessed with things like work-life balance. People want to be going out and they want to go surfing and they want to go to the beach and they don't want to work too late. In the north, work-life balance, who gives a crap? You live to work and you work to live, right? That's it. So everyone is working. Everyone is rushing to work and from work. It's all just, you want to get to a place where you make as much money as humanly possible and then just continue to make as much money as humanly possible. That sort of is the driving factor for the people in the north. They will fight for independence eventually and split the country into pieces. That one white-only town in SA is already trying that. Urania, if that happens eventually, if you get to a city-state solution and eventually the city-states demand complete independence, that's a different story, right? But I would say for now, the best possible solution is probably city-states, where every city just rules itself. It's the fun. We will split along those ethnic and cultural lines. There's so many examples of this across Africa. It's so sad. Yeah, I think you may even find that Mason, what do you mean? Still one of yours. I think you may even find that you may even find that when you allow people to be split along those lines and you allow city-states to exist, and by this I don't mean racial, right? I am not a racial purist. I don't believe that people of the same race should be the only people that live together. I'm much more interested in your view on life, right? So if you're a black person and you believe in capitalism, welcome, brother. I want to have a country with you. If you're a white person and you believe in socialism, go away. I don't want to share a country with you. I'm not suggesting that you shouldn't have your country. I'm just suggesting that it shouldn't be my country, right? So I couldn't care less about racial lines. The city-states for me would also be a thing of a city determines what it is, and people who want to live under that system move to that city-state so that they can live in a system that they agree to. The ancient Greek system? Caleb, yeah, maybe the ancient Greeks weren't too wrong. They used Machiavelli, the prince, as a guideline. They're ensuring they remain in power at all aspects. It also gives them wind of any rebellion that could be starting so they can terminate it. Probably not wrong. So would you live in a company town, Akko? No. But not for the reasons that you might think. I think corporations are great because they're simple. Right? A corporation wants to make money, and you can trust a corporation to only ever care about making money, and I kind of like that. I think corporations must only care about making money. I don't think corporations should care about doing good, because I think that blurs the lines. At least when I know you're a company and you only care about profits, I know what to expect, right? I know that I won't trust you when you say you care about the good of people, because you don't. You only care about it insofar as you can increase your profits. The problem with that is, if that same company that only cares about increasing its profits runs a city, they're going to run the city as to increase profits. And that's almost never a good idea, right? So no, I wouldn't be okay with that. Corporatism with capitalism? Caleb, I'm the one that always goes on and on about people talking, about capitalism when what they mean is corporatism. So don't worry. I won't. You're still a PTAer. You're not a Cape Townian. You abandoned us. Mason, I would say I'm probably always going to be somewhat of the North, right? But I do love Cape Town. I love my life here. I love the people. I have a wonderful community here. I have a wonderful church. I have wonderful friends. I love going to the beach. I have so many people that I hang out with. So many people that I genuinely care about in this city. So from that perspective, I genuinely do love Cape Town. I will always have a soft spot for the North, right? For Pretoria and for Polokwane, even though I have no interest in going back to Polokwane except to see my family, maybe. But in my heart, I will probably say there's something very unique about Cape Town. Let me put it that way. There's definitely things here in Cape Town that is completely different to the rest of the country. And as someone who grew up in the North, it's very obvious to me just how different things are. So, for example, while you will always have racism, right? Racial tensions in Cape Town is far less than in the rest of the country. Like, most people I meet here don't really care much about race. Most people. I'm not saying that there aren't racists. There obviously are. Everywhere does have them, right? But it's almost as if Ethan Winters, how you doing, brother? I think because Cape Town has always had a bit more of a mixing scenario, right? So the people are a lot more mixed and live together a lot more. There's just the cultures are very similar. Right? So most people in the Western Cape have sort of similar views on things. They vote similarly. That's why most even coloreds in Cape Town vote DA, right? Most white people vote DA because they just they view life sort of the same. They want the same stuff. And so there's a lot less, I think, racial tension here. We have our problems. Like gangs and stuff is a huge issue. But for the most part, I think you can overcome that to some extent. And Ethan, thank you so much for the follow, sir. Really appreciate you. Welcome to the channel. Thank you. You're far too kind. It's an awesome place. I miss it a lot. Life is a lot more peaceful there, but I'll always give you a shine for abandoning us, Mason, and I deserve that. I'm not. I was asking because of his political views. Yurik, wait. So, you mean that's what you were asking? What about my political views made you think that that's something that I would want, though? Where's this? I wanted to share this with you guys. Because it's actually funny. Do you sleep? William Sladden, how you doing, brother? What do you mean, do I sleep? Yeah, I sleep every night. 6 hours, like a champ. Although today I only slept 5 hours because I had to go to the beach. Someone had a question about recording setups. So I had to meet them for coffee at 6:30 on the beach. But otherwise, yeah, I sleep 6 hours and then I get to work. Like a good little boy, I try to be in bed by 11 because I'm old now and I need to get a good night's sleep. Yeah, sort of need it. The racial tensions are why I think Cape independence is the first independence movement. People can see the issues on race, but governance, so they see the benefit in independent government. Yeah, I'm not immediately against Cape independence, but I'm also not for it, right? I'm also not because like I said, I believe every region should govern itself. I just think breaking away and starting your own country is a lot harder than we might think. So yeah, the Grey Hour recording session. No, not recording session. She wants to do voiceovers. She studied to be a voice artist, and she sort of up until now she's been going to studios and renting out studios. And Moo, how you doing, brother? Going to studios and renting them out, but it gets too expensive, especially as a voice artist or a voice-over artist. You're not always paid that well. So if you're including studio costs, it'll bankrupt you. So she wanted to know, like, what does she need to buy in order to make her own home studio? So I was just giving her some tips on the kind of microphones, the kind of software, that sort of stuff. It was a she. Yeah, was a she. I must add, seeing you talk about politics and not just WoW is so refreshing. One of your gifts is the way you can explain things to people, so it makes sense to everyone. Mason, I really appreciate that. I appreciate that compliment, and I hope that it comes across. I hope that people find my positions good, and that it helps inform them. One of the things I hate and one of the things I try so hard to not do is preach to the choir. And nothing irritates me more than opening a YouTube video and the guy is just preaching to the choir. It's like, man, you could have done a little bit more, right? Like, you could have at least tried to come up with a position that we can all agree on, rather than just speaking to your side. Long term, though, I feel like splitting a country into city-states will lead to more fighting for territory, which will cause more wars. So it doesn't solve the problem. You're right. You see, I find that viewpoint, in my opinion, is based on an incorrect reading of history. People look at history and they say, well, because countries and city-states used to constantly go to war over resources, that's just what will happen. It's sort of the same thing that happens in Europe. People will say you need the European Union because it stops World War II or World War III from happening. Just look at what happened before the European Union, look at what Germany was doing. The problem with that, in my opinion, is that it is an incorrect reading of history. We should ask ourselves, why did city-states go to war in the past over resources? One of the reasons was that resources were incredibly finite. Right? So obvious resources wasn't that easy to get your hands on. More importantly, there was no such thing as trade. If you go back prior to the Second World War, global trade consisted of a tiny amount of ships that may or may not make it, right, from their destination to where they need to go. And you definitely didn't have trade on the level that we have it today, right? Most definitely didn't.
TMB,
you bastard, with $51. Really appreciate you, sir. How's your health?
With new tech.
I've been praying for you, man. So I've been looking forward to being able to speak to you and just find out how you're doing. But more possible now with new tech. TMB, I actually firmly agree with your statement there. I think now with how we approach life, right? With how open we've become to trade, with how specialized the world has become, I don't necessarily think that it's obvious that city-states will just immediately go to war with each other. Because what's easier? Is it easier to invade a city-state, or is it easier to trade with a city-state? Let's say they have iron and we have milk. Would it be easier to just trade those two things, or would it be easier to go to war over those things? The answer is always going to be trade, right? Even now, in a world where technically you could wage war against anyone, right? Nothing's stopping you from going to war. Even now, most countries don't. And it's not for lack of not being able to. It's just because, well, what's the point? I could just buy it from you, right? I don't have to invade you, risk losing my life, risk losing my people. It's better to just trade. So I actually think you'll see less war, not necessarily more war, as a result of city-states. But that's literally based on my own opinion. Humans are fickle and evil, and they may just view that as, hey, more opponents. Let's go, right? So it could have the opposite effect, where previously you only had like 192 opponents. Now you have millions of opponents, and everyone's like, let's do this. I can now go to war with a lot of people. So that is also possible. I'm happy to hear that, TMB. I'm very happy to hear that. Exactly. I think that global trade technology enables smaller, more regional governance globally, but because of things like the UN and post-World War II consensus, borders have been historically static. Yeah, and I think it will eventually change again, right? Today's values should be more about the win for both on all sides. The problem is, all humans are... People hate when I say this, but humans are fundamentally evil. Humans aren't good. Most humans appear good because they don't want to get in trouble, right? Most humans follow the rules because they don't want to get in trouble. But if the rules weren't there, they'd probably not follow the rules, right? They'd probably break the rules all the time if there wasn't any enforcement of rules. And based on that, we need to remember that we can never build a perfect system. It's not possible. Can't be done. All we can do is build a good enough system. Good enough. It will never be perfect, no matter what you try. Every single system that has ever tried to build a utopia has failed incredibly badly, right? Like, let's look at communism and socialism as a great example. All systems that believe it's utopia, and it ends up just being so bad for humans. So we can't build utopia, but we might be able to build good enough. And in that, it's trial and error. You know, America's founding fathers 250 years ago came up with a good enough system. It's not perfect. It's not the best, but it's good enough. And I believe in 10, 15, 20, 30 years, we might get another country that comes up with a system that is good enough. Maybe a little better than the American one, because if you look at the evolution, you have the Greeks, right? That's sort of the first big empire that we kind of know how their governance worked, because you could go back to ancient Babylon, but the problem is we're not entirely sure what their governance system looked like. So we have the ancient Greeks. We kind of know what their governance was all about. The Romans take over and they change some things from the Greeks. They do it much better, but not perfect. Then the Roman Empire sort of gives way to a litany of European empires that all take elements of the Roman Empire, but apply it differently, right? But mostly monarch. The monarchy is the thing that is born out of the Roman Empire. The monarchy takes care of a lot of problems that the Roman system introduced, but the monarchy obviously introduces a whole set of new problems, right? That no one could have foreseen until it actually happened. The American system is then born out of this monarchy, where it identifies, and I think rightly so, that the number one problem is the monarch. That's the big issue, is the monarch. If the monarch is corrupt, then the whole system becomes corrupt very quickly. And so they try and come up with the system that sort of divorces all sets of power so that no one group can ever get that powerful. But now you're already seeing in America, 250 years later, that system has already been mostly corrupted, right? The power rests in the hands of a few, and they can wield that power to their own delight. So there's going to be an evolution of that system as well. George Washington was the one that said that America will have a civil war every 200 to 250 years. He believed that. He didn't think that the American experiment would go on for too long. He thought about 200, 250 years before the people corrupt the Constitution, and then there will be a civil war and a new constitution will be drawn up based on the lessons that they've learned. Because the idea wasn't ever to build a perfect system. It was to build a good enough system for now. And then learning how to move on, you'll eventually adapt and change. So I don't know. How do you guys think? Do you think America is on the verge of civil war? Have you ever imagined what happened if Germans win the war? Custom, I have, yes. I have wondered what would have happened if Germany won the war. Would they have stopped with Europe? Would they have tried to move to America next? South America? Would they have tried to move throughout the whole of Africa? Would they have stopped in Northern Africa? Like, how? I don't know if there's any way to know. The one thing I do know is it would never have been possible for Germany to win the war permanently. John, how you doing, brother? Gray versus blue, the new civil war, brown versus orange. You're probably not wrong, John. Because conquering a nation is much easier than controlling a nation. Putin might learn that in the very near future. If Putin gets his wish and Putin gets to conquer Ukraine, he'll then have to rule Ukraine. Now, what does that look like? Constant soldiers. You will need to have soldiers in every street, in every town, in the whole of the Ukraine, 24/7. Because the Ukrainians aren't just going to lie down, right? They're going to have guerrilla groups. They're going to hit you constantly. They're going to hit your military installations constantly because they're going to make it hard for you. They're going to try and make it so costly for you that you eventually just have to leave. Because that's the whole point. So you can conquer a nation fairly quickly. It's occupying that nation that becomes difficult. So Germany would never have won that war because they would have had to occupy every single one of the countries. You can't just take the country and then move on, because the people will just immediately take the power back. So, and I don't even know if there is a limit to how long you have to control the country before the people accept, right? That, okay, never mind. Look at Ireland. The Republic of Ireland has been Ireland for a long time now, and they still have people fighting, right? Like, they still have people fighting, hating the British, thinking that the whole of Northern Ireland should belong to the Republic. Northern Ireland still has people fighting because some wants to belong to England, others wants to belong to Ireland, and that's like, how long has England had Northern Ireland now? And they still haven't been able to change everyone's minds. So it is insane. The Irish, in a certain sense, are defined by their non-Britishness, pretty much. Hey, Poland had a comeback after 123 years. If you have seen it, right, Mers showed Trump his grandfather's birth certificate, telling Trump, you are actually an immigrant from Germany. That was hilarious, not going to lie. Digit, I have a friend that does a lot of research on ancient families. So specifically looking at these super ancient families that have controlled or have been around for a very long time. So you look, for example, at the Trump name. The Trumps have been significant in the US for a long time, right? Almost all of these families are ancient families that have lots of history and lots of money. Now, according to this guy, he basically doesn't view the world Russia versus Ukraine, America versus Europe, or anything like that. He views the world as families versus families. Would you let USA take over SA? CR, at this point, I'm asking myself, could it be worse than the ANC? So Caleb, his theory is as follows, and he actually has the research to back this up. There are families in this world that are pro-America, anti-Europe. Then there are families that are pro-Europe, anti-America. There's families that are pro-capitalism, families that are pro-communism and socialism, families that are pro-China but not pro-this. So groups of families that all have various different interests in the world and various different areas that they want the world to move in. He basically shows you how some American presidents, whilst appearing to be friends of Europe, helped weaken Europe. So these presidents continuously pushed European reliance on America further and further and further. effectively turning Europe into an American satellite state, where Europe needs to go to America for everything. And if Europe wants to do anything, they have to look to America. They have to ask permission from America because America is the one calling the shots. Then you had other presidents that wanted a stronger Europe. So they were a lot more pro-Europe insofar as they want a strong Europe. Now, according to him, Trump is a strong Europe president. He believes that Trump answers to a group of families that want a strong Europe. And he says this is why Trump is being so hard on Europe, at least in his mind. Because thanks to Trump's policies, thanks to how Trump has been dealing with Europe, Europe is finally rebuilding its military. European governments are finally taking back their production. European countries are finally waking up to the fact that they have to start manufacturing stuff again. And so he's thinking this is sort of like Trump's tough love approach to wake Europe up. Because the families that control him want a strong America and Europe. They don't like the rest of the world. Right? So their thinking is, if Europe and America is both strong, they don't need the rest of the world. They can sort of rule by themselves in their own little corner of the world. And that's why, according to him at least, that these families, this is what they want and this is what Trump is working towards. It's just another theory in a sea of theories as to what's happening. That was the case. Companies are a tool they use. Oh, TMB, yeah, 100%. Like, none of it is, we think, and I think most people sort of feel like that's the case. Even if we can't prove it, I think most people sort of feel like there are very powerful people behind the scenes pulling the levers. Like, I don't know about you guys. Maybe it's just me. But I don't feel like we actually live in democracy. I don't feel like the will of the people is actually the will of the government. Like, all around the world, when I look at the governments of the world, I see certain governments that do the things that their people want, but then also in some ways they don't do the things their people want at all. Right? They do these things that you just sort of go, wait, I don't understand. Why are you doing this? This is obviously not what the people want. Inheritance leads to nuclear families. French style splitting leads to socialism styles where responsibilities are offloaded onto the social system. I wonder what's going to happen in France. I have a friend who's a French historian. I should talk to her. I should talk to her about what's going on in France right now. We are in an oligarchic mafias with sham elections occasionally. I don't even know, because I think a lot of the powers that be, so to speak, in the world aren't even oligarchic. Right? I don't think these families I don't think they benefit from particular presidents being in power. And so I don't think these very powerful families require Trump in office or Biden in office. They're making money either way. They're so diversified and they're so invested in so many different elements that regardless of which president holds power, you can't really touch them. I think it's more a case of the worldviews that change from one to the other. Alison, how are you doing? No government care about the people. They are not in it. They are in it for themselves. Alison, I 100% agree with you. I think the problem, of course, with people thinking that the government cares about them is not understanding what you're asking, and it's physically impossible for the government to care about people. Why would I care about people I don't know? And I'm not talking about the sort of universal I care thing. Because obviously you do, right? When you see a massive global flood, right? So, for example, the floods in Texas. It's heartbreaking. because people died, a lot of people got hurt. It's not great. But it's a different kind of heartbreak. Right? It's not the same. If that happened to one of my family members, that would hit very different to how it hits now. Because I don't know these people. I could not point them out in a lineup. So there's more of it's almost like a dutiful response. You know in your heart that you should care and therefore you care. Right? Yeah, empathy is probably the right word, Mason. It's more an empathetic response. It's people suffering, and no one likes to see people suffering. But it's not visceral. You're asking the government, who does not know you, like Cyril Ramaphosa has no idea who I am. Why would Cyril Ramaphosa care about my well-being? Like, why would this even matter to him? What I want barely registers, doesn't register on this man and on his radar at all. So it's kind of wild when people think that the government somehow would care. It's Corrupt Mafia and Silencing the People here. Good to catch you again. Lucy Dreamer, how you doing? Well, Destiny promote his VPN ads with the flood. Well, I think when it comes to someone like Destiny, there's a different thing that drives that. Destiny's brain has become so politically corrupt that Destiny physically cannot see the evil of himself. The Vengeance, how you doing, brother? Destiny physically can't see it, nor does he care. For Destiny, anyone that suffers under a conservative or Republican government is a good thing, because it proves that the conservatives don't know what they're doing, and hopefully people will learn their lesson. And that's just how it is, right? Hassan is exactly the same. It's people who have allowed politics to become their religion. One of the things that I think a lot of people miss, right? Humans are worshipping creatures. All humans worship something. Those of us who are Christian worship Christ. The Muslims worship Allah. Some people worship science. It's called scientism, right? Others worship politics. Every single human requires something to believe in that is greater than themselves. The problem with worshipping politics is that it gets evil quick. You see, because as a Christian, I hate evil, I hate Satan, and I hate demons, right? Because they're bad and they cause a lot of suffering throughout the world. And they're the opposite of God. So I should hate them. But when your God is politics, the people who vote different to you, they are your Satan, right? They are your demons. So someone like Destiny and Hassan, they don't view conservatives as, oh, they're just, they're conservatives. The conservatives are the demons. They're the evil ones. And that's why someone like Destiny can make that joke and doesn't even matter, right? Wade, how you doing, bro? Those who desire power are not those who deserve it, and those who deserve it do not desire it. Such a good quote, and absolutely spot on. Hi, I'm watching from South Africa. Welcome. Our last great president was Nelson Mandela. Compassion, empathy versus grief of losing a loved one in floods. Sad I'm a teacher and try to model and teach integrity. Alison, so
TMB
I'm not even
TMB,
thanks for the $5, man. Really appreciate you, sir.
Build your local community and stay safe.
Build your local community and stay safe. I could take care. Take care, sir. Really appreciate you, man. Thank you. I don't even I don't necessarily even think Nelson Mandela was a great president. I think one of the things I will admire, at least publicly, because Nelson Mandela, what he said and what he probably meant could be two different things, right? Politicians like to speak out of both sides of their mouth. But one of the things I will acknowledge is the fact that he wanted peace in his lifetime, right? And that's definitely admirable. From a president perspective, because you did say he was the last great president, he didn't do anything, right? And you might say, well, that makes him good, because technically in South Africa, when the government isn't doing anything, things tend to go better. It's as soon as the president speaks that things go wrong. And for some reason, Ramaphosa will never shut up. But I will say he was good because he didn't do anything. As far as being a good president, he didn't do much. Right? He was only there for 4 years. He oversaw the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and outside of that, he didn't do anything else. Right? So I would say he was what we needed at that time. The problem is what happened afterwards. That's where things went really apeshit. Not a fake news from that era that has become history. Probably not wrong. I worship life, that's all. Exactly, and that explains why calling someone a Nazi is used so much. Oh yeah. Religion is that entity one needs to believe in to maintain one's sanity. Alan, to some extent, probably. Wade, thank you very much. Sounds like you were talking about the Illuminati. Braid, not so much the Illuminati. So the Illuminati, the idea of the Illuminati is this idea that there's a room filled with a group of people and they're all making these sort of weird moves, right? Like chess pieces on the chessboard. Not so much that. Think of it more as interest groups. Right? You have business interest groups all over the place. Every single city in every single town and every single town in every single country in this world has business chambers, sometimes multiple business chambers, because they represent different things. They want different outcomes and so on and so forth. Think of these people as just having very luxurious and very big and very influential business chambers. They want certain things and they have the money to make it happen. When you're a billionaire, you don't care about the little stuff because you have the money to influence the big stuff. And so, yeah, they can influence because they have the money to push it. It's not quite the same as an Illuminati, because when people hear Illuminati, they think, people in robes, dark lit or candlelit rooms. I'm not sure if I agree with that, right? It might be, but I wouldn't go that far, right? I think these people are not necessarily advocating for evil, right? It's not that they want evil stuff. They believe that what they want is good. And they think that it's better than everyone else's ideas. Yuckles, how you doing? Just got here. What are we talking about? We're talking about powerful families pushing things in different directions. Share motivations, even without a meeting. Yeah, well, think about it this way. These people probably went to the same schools, same boarding schools, were raised in similar households, similar environments. So even without speaking, they would have very similar views on the world. They would view the world very similarly. Balthazar, well, yes. But now I want you to think even deeper. Everything you've just mentioned there are the names we know about. I once watched this video, and this wasn't a video trying to push any sort of political conspiracy theories. The video is simply focused on families in Europe that have been forgotten to history and yet are still the richest families in Europe. In other words, these are families that no one would ever know about. If you mentioned their surnames, not a single person would know who you're talking about. And yet, these people still own castles. These people still own chateaus in France. They're massively rich, yet no one knows about them. They're not in the public eye. They don't go around the world with, philanthropy. They just sort of exist. Those are the ones that you would never know about, right? Those are the ones that you would never know about. Spakeron, how you doing, bro? 25,000 subs. Absolutely correct. Not streaming that often, and also I think this is the first time ever that I've done a South African stream. So speaking mostly about South African trouble. Because that is sort of new for me. Maybe, how you doing? Habsburg descendants? Could be part of it. I think, like I said, most of the names on that list, I had no idea who he was talking about. Like, he would name these families because he would go to these massive houses in Europe, almost like ancient Victorian houses and stuff. And he would go into like the actual records of the property, because most of those houses were gifted as museums or they're open to the public to visit. But then you go into the public records and you find that it's still being owned, and it's been owned for like 300 years by this family, right? The estate of this family still owns the house, but this family doesn't do anything. They don't speak about anything. They don't appear anywhere. They're not publicly linked to anything. Now, obviously, some of those families have ideas, right, with where they think the world should go. Ventero guy, how you doing, brother? Do you say lobbying just lets people like that operate as kings with none of the negatives? Yeah. I mean, this isn't a new position that I have. I don't believe lobbying should be allowed. I don't understand how we can live in a world where lobbying is a thing and most people don't go, what the is going on? How could you have, I mean, just the European Union has billions of euros every single year flooding into the European Commission. Companies wanting all sorts of benefits from the European Commission. How's that allowed? Like, if a politician runs and says, I'm going to do these things, then that's what that politician should be doing. You shouldn't be able, as a company, to tell that politician, well, actually, instead, we think you should be doing this. So I personally think you should just abolish lobbying completely. It will probably allow for two things. It will keep the government out of the economy as much as possible, but it would keep the economy out of government as much as possible. Living descendant of Charlemagne is King Charles of England. Not even the name changed. Charlemagne equals Charles the Great. Yeah, but is Charles great, though? I would argue Charles is a moron. I'm not allowed to call him a moron, but I think he is one, nevertheless. Luck of the draw is the argument. No? I don't even know if I would call it that. What do you think about pirate software? How can that guy have that big of an ego? Custom, I don't have much of an opinion on pirate software. I've never been a huge fan of his. Let's put it that way, right? Every single take that he's ever had has been, in my opinion, pretty milquetoast. He just says it in a way that makes it sound like a good thing, right? It makes it sound more profound than what it actually is. So I've never been a huge fan of Pirate Software's content. I don't really watch Pirate Software. As to the stop killing games thing, I'm not fully for the Stop Killing Games campaign, as I've said many times before. But not because I'm against the initiative. I love the initiative. I think companies should not be allowed to kill games. I'm just against the wording. And I realize people have explained to me you can't have the wording be specific because that would just not work. I understand that, right? I have no problem with that. It's just, to me, whenever the government is involved, I want us to be very specific about what we want from the government. And because I don't trust the government to do anything, at least nothing good. So that's sort of where my thinking is on this. His way, I think, just reveals him as being a shill. Because it's not that he has a problem with the wording. He just doesn't think that companies should be told that they can't kill games. And I'm like, what kind of stupid take is that? If I bought the game for $60, you should not be allowed to kill that game. Surely that is common sense, no? That will have to be for 4 in the debate room. Charles is now renting the palace for photo shoots and movies. It's going to have other implications, like games costing a lot more, and they'll disguise it as buying to own. Mason, the thing is, they might try that, but it won't work. People are already not buying games at $70. People are not going to buy games at $80. They're not going to buy it at $90. It's too much. $70 for a game, it has to be a super good game for me to take out $70. I'm sorry, I don't feel like that's at all going to happen. So them raising the price, even if it is their claim that if you want to own it, you have to pay more, that's just not going to work. Plus, most people are at least informed enough to know it doesn't cost you that much more to build a back door. Valheim has a back door. You can physically have private servers, right? In Valheim. Palworld has a back door. You can physically have your own private servers in Palworld. So clearly it can be done. And I think what this is going to do, and this is my profound hope, is that it stops the inflation of live service games. My profound hope is that companies now look at gaming, and whenever they're making a game, they don't immediately go, well, I think we can make this a live service game. Because maybe now they'll go, wait, if this isn't working, if this live service doesn't work, we're going to have to support this game forever. So how about we just make it a single player game, and that way we don't have to worry about this. Because right now, every single game that comes out, every company is immediately going, live service, boys, that gives us permanent revenue forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Sometimes games don't have to be that. And so many games doesn't have to be a live service game for that game to work. The entire gaming industry is in the dump. True. If a company gets tired of a game, they can just hand it over to the community. Wade, and that's what this whole petition is about, right? It's the idea that you should build a back door into the game. So that when you can no longer support the game, when the game dies, you can hand that game off to the public, and the public can now do with it what they want. Unlimited is a game I think of. I think the initiative is raising awareness across the board, and some companies will get the memo. They will advertise as having end-of-life plans, of course. It's not going to be AAA doing that. Indies will. Let's see. Because most indies already have end-of-life plans. Right? Most indies do have end-of-life plans, and that's because most indies don't try to make live service games, because live services are too expensive. An investment that only cares about how lucrative games are versus gamers and devs who care about quality. Ghostwriter, you're on the money there. We are definitely seeing that split. That's very, very good. And I just realized something. A lot of my South African audience is probably sitting here going, wait, what? What are these guys even talking about? Wait, Pirate Software said that it's an indie issue. Most indie games have proper offline modes. And even if they don't have offline modes, they have the ability, like I just said, Valheim, you can have your own private servers. You don't have to use the official servers. The same is true for Palworld. You can have your own private servers. You don't have to use their servers. So it's like, what the hell? Don't understand why you guys are freaking out about games when this is all server driven and you can buy and play through VPNs. Alan Joel, the conversation specifically wouldn't be a VPN fix. Because if the servers go offline, the VPN still can't connect to anything. So that's what this conversation is about. He looked at an apple and called it a banana. His opinion is trash. Wait, when did he... What? I'm going to need a lot more explanation on what you just said. Oh, metaphorically. I was just like, dude, wait. This guy actually looked at an apple and called it a banana. What is going on? But okay, yeah, you mean... I think the problem is he had an original take and he fell into the trap that most streamers do. Most streamers think that they're far more important than what they are, right? Most streamers fall into this trap of thinking that their word is the word of God. So they can say whatever they want, they can do whatever they want, and no one can ever stop them. And to some extent, this is because mostly chat will just agree with everything. Apocalypse, how you doing, bro? That streamers say. And so what happens is when you have thousands of people that just constantly agree with you, you very quickly start to think I'm the only one with good ideas. The issue, of course, there is at some point you have a bad idea. And I think that's where Pirate Software is now. He had a very bad idea, a very bad read on the situation. And because he is so used to everyone just always agreeing with him, he's now doubling down. Even when technically, if he took 5 seconds to think about it, he would realize he's wrong. If he just took 5 seconds to actually think about this issue, he would realize that his position is wrong. But how? Because, he's so used to always just being confirmed that it's impossible for him to even imagine that he's wrong. I thought about something recently. If they got to the end of the life, they can shut the servers down, release the offline mode and server client to customers, and then continue to sell the game on Steam with almost no cost to maintain. Alistair, they could literally swing this into a money-making opportunity. True. Found himself in a position where he can't silence all the voices criticizing him, so he's kicking and screaming in all directions. Is he still going on about this, though? I thought it would have been over by now. The other option, without even open sourcing their servers, stop prosecuting people who reverse engineer it to make their own servers which are compatible. See, that's going to be a different question, right? That's going to be a very different thing. Because the whole reverse engineering thing, they're never going to be okay with. Why do we need to keep talking about Rat Software? People brought him up, Apocalypse. I'm just talking about whatever chat wants to talk about. It's like his son when he says I'm above drama and watches drama anyway. He says he's done with the topic and continues talking about it and schizoing in his Discord about every tweet and video people make. Older games being better is a huge problem for all upcoming games. Reverse engineering is way harder than developing it to begin with, I think too. Yeah, but if this initiative is successful, and I'm highly doubting that it will be, but let's imagine that this... Trending, how you doing, bro? Let's imagine that the initiative is successful. My argument would be companies will just start making their games first from the perspective of a fully offline game and then turn it into a multiplayer. Because usually the games that work best as multiplayer games are games that can be played optimally single player as well. Like you could just play it on your own, but then the multiplayer almost introduces a more fun element to it. You know, you look at Baldur's Gate, for example, Baldur's Gate 3. Super fun game solo. Even more fun when you're playing it with friends. But it's fun with friends because it's fun solo. So that sort of, I think more companies will start to focus on that. Which is obviously a good thing. Could you check on Group Gaming EU lobbyists that seem challenged this initiation? I've already looked into that. I haven't made a video on it, but I have looked into it. It literally doesn't matter. Because this is effectively just EA and Ubisoft and all of these companies going, nah, that's literally it. It sort of reminds me of this. It's literally the same. This is sort of going back to South African politics, I realize, but it's literally the same thing, right? So my government is currently being accused, the ANC, is being accused of defending ministers. We just had a minister in South Africa that is accused by the Lieutenant General of the police, the Lieutenant General Commissioner of Police in KZN, accused the Minister of Police of being a crime boss, being in bed with crime syndicates, gangs and shit, right? The ANC, after all of these accusations, literally just went, nah. You know, like, that's it. Listen to this. Like, I kid you not, just listen. The African National Congress says its days of defending members who do wrong things are in the past. So, admitting we did do it before, but we're not doing it anymore. The Democratic Alliance has criticized President Cyril Ramaphosa for axing his Deputy Minister Andrew Whitfield for traveling aboard without permission while he protects ANC ministers embroiled in corruption. At a media briefing in Johannesburg on Monday, the ANC denied that any of its members were being protected. The DA said, which of course, the Blue Party also added Human Settlements Minister Thembi Simelane to the list, stating that she must also be held accountable for her links to the VBS heist. Additionally, David Malobu was included with the DA. However, and this is where it gets super fun. The ANC Secretary General Fikile Mbalula said the party doesn't believe Ngabane lied to Parliament. He said both Simelane and Malobo had not been charged in court. The thing that we are complicit as a party to the protection of wrongdoing, maybe in the past, at the present moment we are carrying out our renewal project. Effectively, the ANC is going, they're not guilty because we say they're not guilty. So we're not protecting guilty people. The guilty people we're protecting are not guilty. That's literally it. That's what's happening. And that's literally the same as the group in the anti sort of kill all games or the kill all games initiative. Doubling down if you're white. Also true. Also true. Apocalypse. I get an impression that things are turning around in SA last few weeks. Trending, I wouldn't say turning around. Definitely not turning around. But I do think that there's definitely a sense that things are The country is sick and tired. The people in the country are sick and tired of the nonsense.
Corruption is not bad. Corruption is only bad if I'm not involved.
Yes.
But if I'm part of that corruption, I'll defend it. And corruption is not.
That's pretty. My president could have been the one saying this. That's pretty much how it works here in Africa. I mean, fair enough, right? Fair enough. Because technically speaking, he's not wrong. You know, if you're part of the corruption scheme, getting super rich, it really isn't bad. Like, you're not really paying any price for it. So why would you care? You know? Sick and tired is an understatement. Alison, I feel you. And yes, I think a lot of South Africans are... My brother is also a teacher in the north. And hearing the craziness that's going on in South African schools is a whole different level of crap. The Western Cape in South Africa is considering going independent. Wade, there's a party in the Western Cape called the Western Cape Independence Party that wants to go independent. The Western Cape, however, is not considering going independent. In fact, the biggest party here, the DA, with about 60% of the vote, they don't want to go independent. And I would also say most Cape Townians probably doesn't want to go independent either. Just because of how messy that would be. Remember, most Cape Townians have family members all over South Africa. Right? So they don't want to live in a separate country. So I think the thing is, I think most South Africans don't even know what that means, really. When they say, oh, we want to be independent, I think most South Africans are like, oh, okay, we don't even know what that means. So, you know, it is fine. I like I said before, I think there's value in having that conversation. We should probably have that conversation more openly and more honestly, even though I'm not entirely sure if it's actually going to work or if it will ever actually materialize. 5 years to retirement. Nice, Alison. So almost. I don't think that will happen. Gonna go visit my brother. Better get my visa to go next door. Apocalypse, you joke, but there's literally towns on the border which would probably fall into that problem, where you would literally need a visa to just go to the shop down the road because it happens to fall in the greater South African area rather than, you know, in the Western Cape area. How has De Beers been affected? Balthazar, funnily enough, not at all. Most of the mines that De Beers used to own in South Africa has already been sold to others. Like, most of those mines have already become not commercially viable, and so they've been sold to other companies. The vast majority of mines in South Africa actually now is owned by Russians and Ukrainians. Like massively rich Russians and Ukrainians own the mines here. And then, funnily enough, gold and aluminium will not be tariffed by Trump. And it just so happens that De Beers is huge in the gold space. Like they own most of the gold mines that are commercially viable in South Africa is owned by De Beers. So I don't think that's why Trump didn't tariff gold. The US obviously needs aluminium or aluminum, as you guys say. We'll just forget the I guess. The US wants aluminium, and obviously every country wants gold. So it kind of makes sense that you don't want to put tariffs on those. I think in Belgium and Netherlands, that has the border go through their living room. Z Vengeance, I know there is a town in Belgium where the border of the country runs literally through the town. That would be the funniest shit ever. To put it to a fault the whole word, so they had to remove letters. Actually, why? Wait, what do you mean, actually, why? That it's not actually why, though. They didn't remove the I because they were too poor to afford the letter. Boer is pronounced beer? No. It's boer. Or, as you guys say, boer. Although, yeah, that's just an English pronunciation of the word. But in Afrikaans, it's boer. It was too costly to print the whole word, so they removed letters that could be removed without affecting the phonetics to make it easier to mass print books to teach the illiterate peasants. That is insane. So South Africa exports raw resources just to buy high-end products made with those resources back. Feels so dumb. Wade, this is an incredible problem in South Africa. We have almost zero secondary industry in the whole of South Africa. People who might not... primary industry would be farming and mining, sort of primary. You're getting whatever resources it is out of the land or the earth. Secondary resources would be actually refining that. So turning that into other things. And then tertiary sectors or tertiary foundations would be taking the refined gold and turning it into jewelry, for example. South Africa has no secondary sectors. They've all been closed down. And the few that are still left are suffering to operate. So, for example, steel smelters in the country are suffering. And the reason for it is they can't compete with the cheap steel from China. But more importantly, they can't compete with the prices that other countries charge for our steel. So because other countries are willing to pay a hell of a lot more for the actual steel ore or the iron ore to turn into steel, the smelters can't match those prices. And so they're closing down as a result of this. Without a secondary industry, you're almost always selling at a loss. Because you have to get that stuff back so that you can create things with it. But you're always going to buy it back at a much higher price than what you sold it for. This is just government decisions. Let's call it that. Also makes so many jobs for us. Well, know your meme. We have one big problem. And that is, I'll make a video on this tomorrow. I saw it literally just before we went live. It also doesn't help that the people with those skills are all leaving the country. True. Where is the story? It was yesterday. I need to see it. I was reading the story just before we went live. South Africa heading for even deeper trouble. No. Never mind. This is also from yesterday. Come on, you bastard. They removed the story. I don't think so. It was updated yesterday, but it could have been. Can't find it now. No, I'll look for it later. I'll make the video about it tomorrow anyways. But effectively, Eskom is in huge trouble. Let me see. The problem with Eskom's availability factor is that it's the lowest it has been almost ever. Right? So even now that Eskom sort of claims that it's doing better than ever, here we go. Found the story. So South Africa is heading for crisis worse than load shedding. Right? The current energy availability factor for Eskom sits at 57%. This means 57% of the potential energy that they can produce, they actually produce, which is super bad. This is especially bad when you realize that the average Eskom coal-fired power plant is 41 years old, which means they're breaking down more, they're more unreliable. And then you have another story that my broadband did that actually shows you that the fixing of the Kasule, was it the fourth generator at Kasule? That was done with a second-hand component because it would have taken too long for them to get a new component. So we're currently working on a hand-me-down from Holland or the Netherlands on that one. So that might actually have to be taken off as well. It gets so much worse. So when you look at this chart here, right, this chart shows you how much energy is being produced at the moment. Again, 2023, how low it was. Then you have 2025 is the yellow line. And you can see that we're already going down to, we're way below last year. Way below. It gets worse when you actually look at how much we'll need in the future. So according to this article, if the economy grew by 3%, so just 3%, South Africa would have constant stage 6 load shedding. %3 growth. So you can imagine South Africa is caught between a rock and a very hard place. We need economic growth in order to fix our country. But if we get economic growth, we break the electricity. And if we don't fix the electricity, we can't get economic growth. So we're literally stuck between a rock and a very hard place. The military industry has collapsed. South Africa doesn't really have a military industry, Balthazar. We have a military that is basically just, they'll show up as cheerleaders. You know, whichever country wants to conquer us, they'll be there to welcome them. You know, the country will arrive here on like a little rubber dinghy, plant their flag on the beach, and the military will be there to salute them. Welcome, this is now your country, because the sure as hell won't fight. Greg, how you doing, bro? Oh, Morny, 47 months part of the DJ Nation. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you. You're far too kind. All right, ladies and gentlemen, before I go, is there anything else we need to be talking about? I still have to go do a bit of reading. Is there anything else you guys wanted to talk about? I'm going to come conquer it. Zevenish, you're welcome. You'd literally just, like, the citizens of this country will put up much more of a fight than the military. You'll have to promise the citizens a lot of stuff, unless you want a fight. But the military itself will not do anything. They'll just sort of, you know, they'll be there. There's so much being spent on maintenance to increase the lifespan from 20 years to 30 years. We're at 40. No, your meme. I mean, I think fundamentally, the maintenance that is currently being done is great, but I'm not sure if the maintenance currently is enough. I don't see a world in which the current maintenance gets us out of the problem. Because based on this chart, as you can see, the energy availability factor is 57%. With all of the maintenance that we're currently doing, like, just think about this. Eskom's target is 70%. The availability factor is 57%. That's lower than what it was last year. This is the chart. That was what the energy availability factor was last year at this time. So it's lower than last year. In other words, we're spending more money on maintenance, refurbishing power stations, and yet we're getting less energy out of all of this more money that we're spending. Why aren't we seeing load shedding? Where's the load shedding gone? I'll tell you where. We are burning gas like crazy. The generators are burning non-stop. The problem, these backup generators weren't built to burn non-stop. They're supposed to be a stopgap, right? If something goes wrong or if you have to do emergency maintenance, you can quickly turn them on, fix what needs to be fixed, and then turn them right back off again. With these things running constantly, here's what happens. First, they weren't built to run constantly, so they're going to start breaking down at some point. But more importantly, how many billions of rands is that costing South Africa every day? Because in my opinion, the ANC fixed Eskom by effectively telling them, burn as much as you need to. Just burn, baby, burn. That's it. Just keep going. We don't care about the price. We don't care about the cost. We'll fix it later. One of the things, like one of the questions I have, for example, is the 1 billion dollars that we just borrowed from the World Bank. Or was it the IMF? One of those two. Why? Why are we borrowing dollars from the World Bank or the IMF? South Africa doesn't have a shortage of dollars. We have over $300 billion in cash reserves. Literally in dollar reserves. Like, we could use that if we needed dollars. So why are we borrowing dollars? The only thing I can think of is we're burning that. We're burning that in order to make sure that load shedding doesn't come back. Are they building new power plants? Nope. Solar and wind is the thing. Everyone wants to go solar and wind, except it was a big topic of conversation last year. Then load shedding ended, and then the government sort of went, well, job done, and just moved on. Sort of what you need to know about South Africa, and anyone that isn't South African will know anyone that isn't South African won't understand this, but South Africans will immediately know. In South Africa, something only gets fixed when it breaks. There is no such thing as maintenance in South Africa. We don't maintain shit. We run it, then it breaks, then we fix it. You see, so because load shedding is technically gone now, they don't have to do anything until it returns. This means no new power stations, no nuclear power stations, none of that stuff. Why would you care? Because there's no load shedding now. It's only when the lights go down that they'll suddenly realize, oh, we need to build some stuff now. What had happened? Patches my patch. How you doing, bro? Ophelia, how you doing? Has been over a lot since school's been out. Oh, but you're having fun, I hope. Dude, I thought it's just my country. No, Custom. It's definitely not just your country. Parcelaser, how you doing, bro? There are a lot of corruption. Very, very much corruption here. Most South Africans have solar to compensate for the lack of power. Self-reliance is the only option. True. Sounds familiar. When there's a crack, we say it's not collapsed, so it's fine. Then when it collapses, we say, oh, we should put more concrete next time. True. But then as soon as we put down the concrete, we don't put more concrete. Because now we can steal that concrete and we can just fix it later. That's sort of just how it is in South Africa. We don't maintain. We only react. Whatever needs to be done will be done, but only when it needs to be done. Obviously, this is a really bad way of running a country because certain things, when they break, they get a hell of a lot worse, a hell of a lot faster. We're beyond recreational mini nukes. I boil water with my mini nukes now. I do think the future in South Africa is most likely people just doing it themselves. Because I don't necessarily. I feel like for a lot of people, there really is no other option. So self-reliance is kind of all you can do in this country. You just have to focus on yourself and what you can do. I'm trying to say there was a video, but I don't know if I'll find it now. This may have been one of the greatest videos I ever watched. Either it's so long ago that I'm never going to find it, or did I bookmark it maybe? Man, I should bookmark things more. I always forget. I watch something and then I go, oh shit, this is cool. I should bookmark it. And then I completely forget. Most people, they say, can't afford solar or alternative energy sources. Have you seen the documentary Empire of Dust? I have not, the Viking Barbie. If you want to link it to me, you can link it on Discord or X. It's fine, either way. I will watch it. Just trying to see if I can find, because this video was so good. An explanation for why the country is the way that it is. Why Africa really is the way that it is. The question is, where did I put this? Man. No, I don't know where I put it. If I come across it again, I'll share it. Effectively, it's a guy that speaks to a bunch of people from different African countries, a black guy. And he effectively asks them, do you have a word for maintenance in your language? And they go, no. No, fix. We have a word for fix. And he said, well, fixing isn't maintenance. It's not the same thing. See, and it's a cultural thing. It has nothing to do with value. It has to do with you have to be brought up in a specific mindset that preserving things are important. If you're not brought up with that mindset, you see it, for example, with leftists. Leftists right now have no interest in preserving anything because they weren't brought up with the mindset of maintaining things. They were brought up with the mindset of destroying things. And that's what you're seeing, right? So it's a cultural thing where if you're not brought up with the concept of maintaining things, you will just destroy it and it won't even matter to you. In the EU to fix stuff, we use a quarter of the materials required. Pocket erased, and when it breaks in a few months, we ask the EU for more dollars to fix it. Nice. Most people in SA can't afford solar or alternative energy sources. Societize that's easy because people... Oh yeah, I was going to talk shit about the banter thumbnail. We saved video games. Kotaku got sold off and bro's like, worst week in gaming? Well, Training, the thing is, it's worst week in gaming because of Microsoft, right? And what's happened with Microsoft. Not so much the Kotaku getting owned. That's a good day. Obviously, that's a great day. But what happened at Microsoft is, well, I think it's bad news for the future of gaming in general. I think this is not the first time. I think we're going to hear of thousands more losing their jobs. And while some of the people there might not deserve to have that job to begin with, there's also going to be a lot of people that will lose their jobs, right? That are actually good. And you should technically not want them to lose their jobs. All right, boys. I think that is all for today. I'll be back tomorrow, same time. Well, dependent on how much news there is to cover. But for now, I hope to be back tomorrow, same time as today, for another discussion. Chat is completely broken. Hold up. Something weird's going on here. CR, you're absolutely welcome. My chat's completely broken on this side because it's constantly... It now told me 4 different times that 4 different people are typing, I was going to talk shit about the banter thumbnail. So that chat's completely broken. I'm just looking at this one instead. And then the Twitch one over here. I really appreciate all of you for coming out, for hanging out, for spending time here. You guys are absolutely amazing. Really appreciate each and every one of you. I'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. As always, be good to each other. Be kind to each other. And I will see all of you in the next one. Peace.